So the three films that ended up to be my top three for the class were What Does Great Britain Mean to You, using no moving pictures, and then the experimental film that took the form of a letter to a loved one, and then a found footage film that handled a human rights issue that was meaningful to me. I did make the other two films, but I didn't feel they were as strong as these three. I did enjoy making all three films, but there were some difficulties. With the first film, What Does Great Britain Mean to You, with no moving images, even though it was simply putting together just sort of a set of pictures set to music, there had some issues when it came to editing my sound there. I had wanted to put some sound pieces from videos that I've taken, and I was hoping to put it into the audio track and kind of have the music that was already there fade out and have my audio play and then have the music start up again. But I did cut the sound a bit rough, and the transition that I was hoping for wasn't there. There were also some editing problems. When I went to edit it, it sounded okay, but then when I went to export it, it ended up having some of that weird sound. So I tried to re-export it a couple times, and it just ended up the way it is. But I think it still ended up well, even though that editing was kind of tricky. I'm still happy with the way that it turned out. For my next film, the experimental film that took the form of a letter to a loved one, so for that I was in a way somewhat inspired by after we watched The Five Obstructions, because I mean it was a small part of the film, but when in the very beginning, when they say this is the perfect human, and they say like this is an eye, this is a mouth, this is an ear, I wanted to take what I understood as that kind of idea of focusing on a specific feature that maybe wouldn't always be spotlighted in a way. So I wanted to do only shots of hands and feet, because I feel that a lot of the time in film, an audience relies on an actor's face to portray emotion. So obviously when they're speaking, you're looking at their face, but then even when they're not speaking, your face can convey a lot of emotion. So you find yourself looking there, but when it comes to body language, your hands and feet can really actually reveal a lot. So I knew that I wanted to do that. When it came around to it, I had to use one of the cameras from media services, which was fine, but back at home I'm just used to a bit of a higher quality camera, so I did struggle a bit with the quality of the picture that I was getting, because if you watch the video, it's a bit grainy, it's not the best picture, and I mean that could be to do with the lighting, because I filmed it in my room and the lighting is terrible, but so that was a bit of a struggle. But once it all actually came together and I watched it in its completeness, I actually liked the fact that the picture wasn't perfect, because I felt that it kind of went along with the entire theme or concept of the film, because I wanted the film to be this sort of raw, feeling, uncomfortable to watch film. So I think it did actually help that the picture wasn't perfect. I also struggled with editing on that one, because I filmed the hand and feet shots in just one sequence and then cut them up, and I knew I wanted each sequence or each thing to be extremely short, choppy segments, just hand foot. So I had to cut up all this footage and then put it together, and I didn't want there to be a pattern of the images that you're seeing, because again, like my overall idea of the film was that I wanted it to be just uncomfortable, and there's no pattern to it, and there's really nothing to grasp onto that would make it comfortable or that you could latch onto. So I just had to keep taking these 1-second clips and putting them in, and just fixing the spacing, and that definitely was my most difficult film to edit. It took several days, but once I was finished, it was the film that I was also the happiest with and the most proud of. So even though it was difficult, I am happy that I stuck with it and did it, because again, it's my favorite film that I made for this class. So my third film, the found footage about a human rights issue, I did it about human trafficking and sex slavery. Surprisingly, I did have a bit of a difficulty finding content, not in the sense that there wasn't a large volume of things online, but I wasn't finding things that I felt I wanted. I wasn't finding things that kind of went with the idea of the film that I wanted to make. A lot of the things that I did find online, a lot of like PSAs or some other documentaries about it, or like kind of reenactment things. And so I was afraid the things that I found might have been a bit too theatrical for the sort of tone that I wanted my film to have. So there was a lot of time searching and finding and cutting and to find the content that I wanted. But in the end, I did find a lot of good content, and I think that I was able to put together something that I was happy with. And even if it didn't follow my original idea, I was able to tweak it. And I was really happy with the way that the film turned out, even if it wasn't exactly what I had planned, or if it didn't completely follow the idea that I was hoping it would. I think it was still really meaningful to make, and I was happy with the way that it turned out. So despite having obviously some challenges and difficulties while making the films, I'm happy with the way that they all turned out. As far as what I did with my films after they were completed, obviously I uploaded them onto the YouTube page. I did put 2 up on my Facebook page, just to kind of let all my Facebook friends see it and see what I was working on, because I have shared my work from my home university, but it's very different. So I was interested to see what people thought about the work that I was doing. And I just showed family and friends, and then I also sent some of the videos to a professor back home who has been my film professor for 2 years, just to kind of get his thoughts and see what I was doing. But as far as like wider distribution or anything into a festival, I didn't choose to take that route, simply because I didn't feel that the films were strong enough, or I wasn't completely comfortable with trying to send them out to do that. So I just kind of kept them more for a smaller audience and just friends and just people that I know. Yeah, so obviously there's reasons why I made each film that I did. So the first one, the What is Great Britain to You with No Moving Images. So for that, I obviously just went through kind of my pictures and videos and did put, just put the pictures to kind of a song in the background. And while I'm sure there were definitely more creative ways to do it, after watching The Year of the Nail, I kind of saw how there were completely different ways to somehow make a film without moving images. I thought that was really interesting, but I guess I just sort of made like a music video type thing with just a song and pictures, but I feel there was more thought and consideration behind it than kind of maybe was shown, because I did choose pictures and things that were meaningful to me and kind of what I felt is my Great Britain. And I wanted to put some of the personal sound bites in there to give it more of that personal feel. So, and I just wanted to keep it simple for, just my first film in this class and just kind of feel it out. And obviously it was imperfect, but I was still happy with it and I felt it was meaningful. And again, I did enjoy making it and I enjoyed watching it, and I'm happy with the way it turned out. My second film, The Experimental Love Letter, was my favorite film that I made, the one that I'm most proud of. So as I mentioned before, I knew that I wanted to do only hands and feet because I personally talk with my hands a lot, so I was really interested in the whole concept of actually thinking about what do you really do with your hands and feet when you're in a conversation, and how loudly your body language can really talk and say so much more than even the words that you're speaking. So I filmed the sequences of hands and feet, and I kind of, in my mind, I was just thinking, if I was sitting here having an uncomfortable conversation, what would I be doing with my hands and feet? You maybe scratch, or you like interlock your hands and you're moving around a lot. Maybe you cross your legs, or you like crack your toes, and you just do this and you clench your fists. So I was really interested in that aspect. And then when I watched it back, I was really, really happy with it because I just felt that it portrayed so much beyond even needing dialogue. Once I did put the actual spoken love letter in there, I thought it went really well. So originally, I did write and record an entire letter, and as far as the content of it, so I did originally write down a letter that I was going to say. That was a personal, my personal feelings about something. And when I began to record it, I found myself beginning by following the letter. Then I felt it felt very scripted, and it didn't seem natural. So I started reading the letter, but then I kind of just started to speak freely and just kind of let more things come out. And it definitely took more of a much more natural direction, and I even found myself saying things that that I didn't think I would. And in the end, the letter that came out, I think, was a lot more meaningful because it came out in a natural way. And so I set the full-length letter to the images and put it all together and watched it, and I was happy with it, but I didn't feel that it was as strong as I wanted it to be, or as emotionally jarring as I really wanted it to be. So I thought maybe if I cut up the sound, and maybe if I take some of the letter out so that it's kind of just some statements that don't make sense, that's what I want. Because again, the whole idea of the video was that I don't want it to make sense in a way. I don't want it to be comfortable. I don't want there to be patterns. So in the end, I just have in the video just some sound snippets, and it's this, and some repeat themselves, and some talk over each other, and it doesn't completely make sense because there's pieces missing in the middle, and I was so happy with the way that it turned out because that's what I wanted. When you watch it, it's just blurbs of sound, and they're interrupting each other, and they're repeating themselves, and you don't really know what's happening, and there's one statement that is sad, and the next one is me yelling something. And so I was really, really happy with the way that it turned out. And even though it was imperfect and there were things, again, it was my favorite film to make and the one that I'm most proud of. So for the found footage film, I have never made found footage, so that was a new concept to me. But it was exciting because, you know, I was excited in the fact that I got to take other pieces of film, you know, that someone else had made, and I got to mix them together to make my own idea, you know, of a film that was meaningful about a human rights issue. So, again, all the things that I found were kind of PSAs, and they were kind of reenactment type things, but I didn't want the film to have a theatrical feel. So I kind of did my best. I took footage from PSAs and then another short documentary about kind of human trafficking and just modern day sex slavery, kind of in any form, whether it's the fact that, you know, someone has been kidnapped and they're literally being forced to have sex for money, or if they're that sort of slave to themselves in that they're willingly using their body. So I found things that I thought made sense in somewhat of a subtle way. Obviously some of the clips aren't subtle. I think there's one of like a man pushing a young girl onto a bed and obviously trying to have sex with her. But others are just, you know, like you see an older man leading this dressed up girl up the stairs, and oh, he has fancy wine and this, and so it didn't completely turn out the way that I wanted to. I wanted something that was a little more real in a sense and kind of raw, but the things that I found online put me in a bit of a different direction. But I am still happy with the way that it turned out, and I put the soundtrack behind it, the Girls Just Want to Have Fun song. Originally I had the original version of the song, which is a much more happier, upbeat song, but I felt that it was almost too much of a contrast, and I didn't want it to look so theatrical in the sense that, oh, this happy song is playing in the background and then you're seeing this. So I found a more toned down, more somber version of the song, and I felt that really went with it because it still has the message of the song behind it, you know, that like innocence and girls just finding themselves. But the more somber tune I was a lot happier with. And then I did put in some sound clips. One of them was from Michelle Obama giving a speech about like female empowerment, and then the others were from red carpet interviews from some award show where these big name Hollywood actresses were asked, what advice would you give young girls? And it was all like really positive things, like be yourself, love your flaws, don't let your mistakes stop you, don't let anyone tell you can't do it. So I just felt that was so ironic going with the picture, because they were saying such positive things, like, no, you can do this, you're beautiful, love yourself, and then you're hearing that play as you're seeing young girls who are sex slaves. And so I was happy with the way that it turned out, and I felt that the sound definitely contrasted the video, and I think it turned out well. Yeah, so I have never taken a class like this before. I am a film student back home, but the things that we learn are much more traditional, in the sense of making a film with a plot and characters, and my whole kind of idea of film and production, I think, was the whole Hollywood scene, and having a film that is just going to entertain people and make money. And I feel my views of film were pretty narrow, so after taking this class, I feel like I've learned so much more about film and how much more it can be, and that you can make a meaningful film, and it doesn't have to be this Hollywood blockbuster with special effects, because that film isn't meaningful. It's just an entertainment film to make people money. But watching the things that we watched from 5 Broken Cameras, which is this guy just getting any camera he can just to record the things that are going on around him, or even the one that we watched, This Is Not a Film, which is just, it's not a film, it's just a man, recording himself when he's under house arrest, and you're watching it and you're just kind of like, does this make sense? Like, why am I watching this? But I think that's so much more meaningful, because you're not a passive audience member. You're questioning what you're watching, and you're engaging with it more, and it might be strange, or it might not make sense, and it might be imperfect, but I think that's what makes it good. The whole idea of imperfect cinema, and reading about it, and just embracing that whole kind of idea, was really, really interesting to me, because obviously, coming from that Hollywood mindset, you would not want to have imperfections, or you would not want to have this weird film. But after learning about these things, it's so exciting to me that there's this whole genre, it's kind of underground, guerrilla-y thing, that you can get a camera and you can film something, and you can make a film, and it is a film, and it's meaningful. And I definitely learned to embrace films that are different and are imperfect, and not to judge them simply off of an imperfection, but maybe to think about why they're imperfect, or why the filmmaker did this. And I think it makes for such better films than things that I've seen in the past. And so I definitely learned to look at film in a different way, and learned that you can make film in a different way, and you can be experimental with it, and it can be really good. And so definitely learned a lot from this course, and I feel that I was challenged, and I'm really happy with the work that I did. And yeah.